Hi, my name's Aubrey. Yes, the beer. Hi. Amazing.
That's a Guinness. Right there. Hi. Thank you for identifying. For that great
I'm just really excited to meet you. Thank you. I love your book as well. The pterodactyl part is just really
Excellent. What's your name?
Aubrey.
How do you spell it? I actually have an Aubrey friend who spells it with E at the end.
So many different ways. It's hilarious.
All right.
He said there's one on your jacket about pop.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aubrey.
Nice to meet you all.
Come find
We're so honored that Penn USA would have us come and present artist books to you this out of your week to be with us and our Between Two Lamps. Alexandra figured that out by the process of elimination. And here on stage with Robbie Baitz. Here, it's sort of between two now. The order of things is that Keanu and I are going to talk a little bit about ex-artist books. We're going to talk a little bit. And then at some point, we'll fill this chair. Do something that will surprise us.
I will.
Yes, that's the plan.
I will ask questions very fanishly.
Fantastic. We can't wait. We weren't allowed to disclose any information beforehand in the green room, so, okay. So we're going to get started. Ex-artist books.
Started in May 2016. It was Alexandra Grant's amazing idea, and that's kind of why we're here.
Thank you. You also said yes, though. Say no to a great idea. Exactly. So the great idea, a small press based here in Los Angeles that looked at what happened to be our secret. Many of you here in this room also have a book that you've been working on, maybe with a collaborator, and we wanted to bring 4 secret books to the world. Ex-artist books, X comes from the idea of collaboration, of bringing unique, unusual, sort of hard to pinpoint exactly what they are books into the world.
Don't forget the love part, the X.
Aww. You can't make this collaboration. I don't even know. I'm like, where do we pick it up from there? That's sort of like the, anyway. Love is really at the center of what we do at Ex-Artist Books. We fall in love with an idea. We fall in love with an author, with an artist, and what our books are. The reason we're here at Penn USA, even though they're artist books, is that we're really, really interested in narrative and the way that narrative can cross disciplines and connect people, their hearts, their souls, their intellects. So we've had such an honor this year to work on 4 different projects. The first book is The Artist Prison, which we'll speak about a little bit later. That was my book, and Ex-Artist Books became, we're going to say XAB, just to make it a little, because it just, Ex-Artist Books, it rolls right off the tongue.
It does.
It does.
XAB too.
Okay, thanks for that. So XAB began because I needed to find a home for the artist prison, and in going to wonderful graphic designer Jessica Fleischman, who's here in the audience somewhere. I hope. Oh, she's not. Oh, my goodness. Well, she's in spirit in the room. And she had a secret book that she'd been collaborating with Sylvan Oswald called High Winds. Then, it turned out that there was another artist book called The Words of Others that was part of Pacific Standard Time show at Red Cat by Leon 1997. So we to get involved in an international bilingual 3-year research project work. And then the book that we published in the last year was Zeus, which was a secret book of yours.
Yeah, I'd worked with the artist and photographer Benoit Fougeois, and we'd done a book together about 4 years ago, and I'd helped him publish it. And he had been working on another project, supporting him along the way. And and then I was like, Benoit, we're going to publish your book. And he was like, merci.
Sometimes that's what you need to do. Is just found the publishing house in order to bring the collaborations to light. So let's talk a little bit about the artist prison. I do see Eve Wood in the front row. Hi, Eve. Eve, in a way, was my first listener and first reader of the book. She is the artist who I got to collaborate with and who believed in this crazy idea that the art world might someday live in a Kafkaesque in the future. She read it, but she beautifully, surprisingly, violently, joyfully, cheerfully illustrated this book with wonderful images that you'll see projected behind us when we read. So at some point we can start the projections too, speaking of those, so we can see Eve's beautiful images. What we're going to do, we make a selection. I think there's 44 prisoners in the book, and Keanu and I are going to, there's 2, basically the story is that there's a what's it called? The thing where they talk, a deposition. Thank you so much for that, Keanu. There's a deposition going on, and I just look at him and I feel deposed. So there's a deposition in this future state, a commander, which Keanu is going to play until I exhaust my voice, being the warden, which has a much longer speaking part, and then we may switch off. But basically, it's the warden of the artist prison, and she is sort of saying the state, the nature of each one of the prisoners that's in the prison, how they got there. They are either artists who are sentenced to be in prison because they committed a crime, or criminals who are sentenced to art. And it's basically a wonderful, how can I say this? It was, for me, a way of doing an analysis of the art world and using, a Calvino Kafkaesque framework. Am I getting too far ahead in terms of the questions? Don't look at me, okay?
I'll go back and
Then I can expound further.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So we have one.
It's also like about the impulses to create, right? And the obsessionness, the compulsion, obsession, and what that can, and the cost of that maybe perhaps too.
Haha.
Yummy.
So if we can start the slideshow, the one note we want to make, we're going to screen the entire book as we're reading, is that the actual book is a legal document. And so as you're seeing the images, you'll see that parts are redacted. So maybe we could take this, maybe it could be a vote. When a word is redacted, do you want us to say redacted? Do you want us to get quiet? Or should we say redacted? Okay, we're going to start with that.
Because now everything is redacted.
Right. Okay, thank you. Any other stage notes before we begin? Okay, you are a playwright, it's true. You're being a good health guru upstairs, too. Appreciate that.
Any medical problem.
We'll address those. All right, so.
The Artist's Prison. From the secret files of the state, redacted for public viewing on January 16th. Redacted. Name?
Redacted.
Your title?
Senior Warden, Prison Redacted, known as the Artist's
Prison.
34 years.
Do you know why you are here?
Yes, sir. To give my evaluation of the prisoners so that they may be transferred when the prison is closed.
Prison Redacted will close in May. Why is it called the Artist's Prison?
Because of the punishments.
Are all the prisoners artists?
No, not all of them. Not when they arrive.
But when they leave?
It depends. It says adjust the microphone. Sorry. But, sir, very few of them have ever left.
That's what we are here to discuss. You prepared a report on each prisoner?
Yes.
Then let's begin. Prisoner number 5, redacted.
Prisoner number 5 is a renowned art critic. His crime was that he murdered his lover. Details of the crime itself are in the file. The murder was gruesome, and he was to life in prison without parole.
I remember his reviews in the state newspaper, as well as the trial. Lurid.
The state still relies on his expertise. In fact, there is no one in the country whose knowledge of the history of art, according to its experts, is more accurate than his. You'll see in the file the State Museum, the chief curator, the senior curator, the associate curator, and the adjunct curator, as well as the short handwritten note from the curatorial assistant. There are also letters from the 5 top galleries in Redacted, as well as the editor-in-chief of Redacted, and the Diocese of Redacted, and the Redacted family, without whose support in the former state, the museum would not have been possible. Both have reached out discreetly to articulate their support. It was the communications from all these distinguished persons that convinced Redacted and the state to come to an agreement as it stands now. Prisoner number 4 is not an artist, and he was assigned originally to Redacted prison in the Redacted district, as his crime was premeditated and emotionally driven. It was there that Redacted suffered abuse from other prisoners as well as from a depressive state. After receiving a massive amount of correspondence from various members of the art establishment, the state came to see that the art world was in crisis without Redacted's opinion. Nobody could decide for themselves what was good or bad art, and everyone was in disagreement. The correspondence made it clear that Redacted's opinion was still absolutely necessary for the art world to go on at all. Unlike the state's other prisons, were set up to be able to handle art affairs, and so Redacted was transferred here. When I sat down with him to complete his entrance formulae, Redacted made it clear that he didn't want to return to being a critic. I convinced him his role was not to criticize, but to validate. He thought about this, then requested 2 rubber stamps. One says Redacted, and the other Redacted. All art institutions submit their images to our offices here. Every day after lunch, Redacted comes to my office and reviews the files for validation.
Are there many requests?
No artwork is made in the state which doesn't get a rubber stamp.
But what kind of numbers are we talking about?
It varies. There are at least 10 requests a day. Redacted reviews them and then stamps a redacted or a redacted on each application. They are generally for individual artworks, but have expanded to include entire exhibitions or the admission of a whole collection to the State Museum. Nothing moves forward without Redacted stamp.
Have you had any trouble from Redacted? Any behavioral issues?
Antisocial. Recently, the prisoners from the afternoon still life drawing class petitioned him to organize a group show. I'll never forget his response. "You don't need my approval to be artists," he hissed. After that, he recoiled from any contact with other prisoners, and he doesn't speak to me when he comes to my office. I would recommend that Redacted remain in the service of the state with his rubber stamps. He serves some greater purpose in the world than even I can pretend to understand.
What do you mean?
A few years ago, Redacted asked for a die.
As in one?
In his work, the film, without looking at the image of the work of die, and based on the toss, chooses one stamp or the other.
I see.
His is a stamp operation. He then looks at the image and writes a detailed justification for accepting or rejecting the artwork, still. But this is every day. Every once in a while, I'll catch him seeing the images with such fervor and intensity. I think it's too bad he has limited himself to only 2 stamps. But then I know why he does it. He throws the die, bringing chance to it, choosing whether something is good or bad by the throw of the die. This is what makes an artist. I've come to believe critics suffer under the pretense of their misguided apprehensions. All secretly desire to be artists, even failed artists, yet they cannot take the plunge.
So prisoner number 5 is rehabilitable then?
Yes,
Why?
because of the die. He cares too much.
And the die takes that away.
Yes, the die protects him from his own passion.
Prisoner number 18. Redacted. The feminist.
In many ways, prisoner number 15 or 18? 18.
18.
Let me begin that again. In many ways, prisoner number 18 is the mirror image of the misogynist. She, too, is motivated by the performance of her beliefs and will have best women or a feminine principle. Everything is personal. Over the last few years, we've studied her secretly through the observation window in her cell. She, like the misogynist, is most content when she is alone. But when an audience is introduced, so is the theater. The addicted and the passion she gets, watching men in a defensive. It is no surprise that the misogynist and the feminist are of the generation, like psychic twins having inherited powers from their.
Here as a prisoner.
The feminist is a relatively easy prisoner. Her crimes were simply indecent exposure and prostitution, an activity she describes as, quote, empowering, quote. We've held her for so many years because she has requested to stay. It's as though she needs an institutional framework to function. I recommend that she be released. Her behavior can be described as proselytizing at worst, and her impassioned dialogues against men can be quite moving, to tell you the truth. When informed that she would be released, Redacted asked that she be transferred to a brothel.
But surely she knows those don't exist anymore.
We've begun the briefing for reintroduction. We've told her how gender and sex roles have shifted, the many changes in human biology, etc., etc. I think once she's released, her 5 senses will triumph.
Prisoner 7 Redacted. The failed.
Redacted sits all day in a stasis of failure, her thinking fraught with negativity. You can palpably sense her thoughts, heavy, loaded, negative. If she looks up and out of herself, she is happy to discuss her epic failures, a staggering number, according to her.
But her resume is here and she has barely accomplished anything. The list.
She did graduate from the State Academy of Fine Arts.
No other inmates have done both the academy and the prison.
No, in that accomplishment, she is unique.
And quite costly to the state, I would. Well,
No exhibitions, published no books. Every project she starts, she is unable to finish. The amount of time she spends complaining is at least 7 to 8 times the amount she puts towards anything. Personally, sir, I believe that an initial complaint can be a form of brainstorming or problem solving, but infinite complaints just lead to a state of failure. I can avoid her at all costs, but I'm part of the problem. By reacting, I contribute to her work. Toward building herself up is the failed. Each person who listens or even avoids adds to her construction. Her goal, I think, little by little, is to build her cult of personality and be the most successful failed artist. A black hole of negativity. In essence, her artwork is a perpetual performance investigating abject failure.
What was her crime?
That was her crime. Being a psychic vampire to everyone she comes into contact with. We've been trying to find an adequate punishment and haven't succeeded. She's toxic, seemingly innocuous, and utterly unstoppable. I have a book in the library by Niccolo Machiavelli. In the 8th chapter, he writes about princes who become heads of kingdoms through nefarious means. This has held my attention. What is particularly difficult about Redacted is how we all understand power in relation to her. But why? For what means? I've never made this recommendation before, even though I have the power to do so. I recommend that she be put to death. There is no good that can come from her.
I'll take your comments into consideration.
The echo chamber, sir. 2 less problems for the state.
From an arithmetical standpoint, it does seem that simple. But there are laws and standards to consider. Though I've made a note of your suggestion, anonymously, of course. Prisoner number 38, the artist who couldn't fail.
Redacted was a highly regarded artist both here and abroad. You'll see his exhibition list is very long.
And he is represented by Redacted Gallery. You say was?
I'm afraid so. It's a sad story. Redacted's work has set auction records. Successful. His museum shows have lines around the block, people waiting to see his installations, his paintings, the videos of his performances. His work is all about shame, about male confusion, about his own sense of failure. But the more he explored these themes in his work, the more successful he became. He hated the art world. He hated the art market. He came here to the artist prison to hide from it all, only to find the rubber stamp was stamping his work with gold.
But I thought that no one who knew the rubber stamp was at the prison.
I never confirmed it with Redacted, but he knew. He was always right. He couldn't escape his constant success. Everything that he touched, his own sadness and sense of worthlessness, everything was success. He couldn't fail. Redacted committed suicide last week. We are all deeply saddened at his presence, at his self-deprecation, small talk, and fury at his own success. It made for a witty conversation. We didn't see it coming. Even at suicide, he was successful.
What do you mean?
When we found him, his body appeared majestic and perfectly poised, reminiscent of a famous painting in the State Museum called The Death of Marat.
How did he die? The medical record isn't in the file.
No, the is still underway. I'm pretty sure it was poison, but the official report will confirm or deny it. A reading from the couch.
Just a little bit.
Just a little taste of the artist. We'd like to invite Sylvan Oswald up to stage to join us. Sylvan, will you introduce your work?
Hold on. There we go. So are we going to have, maybe we can have the images of that now too. High Winds is a bedtime book for adults that where the images, which are by Jessica Fleischman, are the vehicle for the words. And it's about a trans guy who can't sleep. And so he goes on a road trip in his mind through visions of some strange Western geography and memories of a messed up relationship. So do I need to say, I was just going to jump into reading it, so you can sort of get a sense of that. I'm going to start reading, and I'm going to read a little from the top, and then I'm going to skip to the middle, but I'll keep you posted on that as the situation develops. A tissue box without a view of anything. High winds lay in bed in men's magazines, bold smelling bloom in the air. Stops waiting for sleep at 5 a.m. Gets art right inside his book. Climbs out window. Scratches face on neighbor's fruit trees. Borrows neighbor's old black truck without asking. Turns up Fairfax into the hills. Drives through vintage postcards to find his half-brother. Not a story of loss, but of neglect and invention. And what was invented was not very nice. And he thinks he didn't do anything. Doesn't even know what he did. Okay, brief synopsis time. So High Winds is in the truck, okay? The truck has magic properties, and so does he. In the book, the laws of physics are like Mad Magazine fold-ins, and time folds out like mid-1950s accordion postcards. That Winds gets from California to Mexico in about 10 minutes. So all you gotta know is if he thinks it, it sort of kind of happens. So he's cruising through time and space. He thinks back to when his half-brother Bantam moved out. He was 11. How he and Bantam never actually had any direct conflict. There was just a mystery between them, some kind of abstract rivalry. And since he transitioned, it's gotten worse. So we're going to jump back into the story at a spot where High Winds has just explored Carlsbad Caverns, if any of you know where that is. It's a 900-foot cave system in New Mexico that once had, it was all tricked out in like 1950s fabulousness. It had a post office down there. They had a cafeteria down there. And the Caverns has just performed a Broadway-style song in a manic plea for the Park Service to return the cafeteria to its former automat-like splendor. So that just happened. High Winds lights a cigarette, spiritually. He eats a meal of hot dogs and candy, deep inside America. Cut to Carlsbad Caverns postal worker enters, unwittingly sultry with purpose. Worker stands with a hand. High Winds is in. Postcards remind curled up in his closet office. Forests of cigar boxes, matchbooks, and people who don't exist anymore. Postcard for High Winds. But postcards betray nothing. This one in his hand says, "Dear High Winds, watching you." Postmark, white sands. The only white sand he knows is the national park that looks like a desert with all the color taken out. Maybe that's his next stop. Hang tight, stalactites. He drives to some kind of state. What's better, numb? Aesthetic crisis versus maybe just busted. All books, 2 words. All internet, to panic. All art, to business. All thoughts been done. Spilled tea on pile of cue card affirmations. New rule, stop cleaning. New rule, stop caring. Do not, repeat, do not clarify magic. Crashed his car, so embarrassing, and destroyed all plays. Might be too late to learn about poetry. He arrives at White Sands National Monument. Endless, colorless, lunar landscape in southern New Mexico. Look it up. Phone booth outside Gypsum Dunes has actual phone book in it, left behind by ancient sea. They say these dunes keep moving. We think, sure, sand blows, sure, beaches erode, that's normal. But for great masses of sand to move, like how much do they move? That's one soundtrack shy of a horror flick to someone indoorsy. Opens phone book. Slight vibration from ground. Map says military range not far. Missile practice. Place. Phone book. Amateur box. Need help reaching bantamweight? Call today and mention this ad for a discount. Picks up the phone to dial. Hangs up. Stall tactics. Truth or consequences, New Mexico. Not sure what he needs in this store. Underwear and package, why so appealing? All one needs for grilling and every intention of camping, rubberized whatsits, water wings for motel pools, and guns don't look like guns. Cashier itches him with her nod. Maybe this candy for payphone change. Use words or none. Claw for way out of journey. But fingers. Back at the phone, he tries again. Hello, clearing my throat, fixing my pitch. Higher, lower, lower. This is High Winds calling in reference to your ad about reaching Bantam. Not sure how old it is. Couldn't believe it. Phone book ad. So I called. I hope your offer still stands. Private road, no trespassers, we don't call 911. High Winds whips the neighbor's truck up long dirt drive. Shallow streams, car commercial. Whole thing would be more heroic if jubilant minivan from Camp Our Savior would let him pass. Buzzing of insects or rattlesnakes. They turn off finally and sing song way. Thank you, Lord. After sharp turn comes to stop and dust cloud settles. Climbs out of neighbor's truck. No tang of half-brother. Place. All salvage. Did he build it himself? Hasn't seen Bantam for years. Walk house to windows. Dog bowl. No dog. Heavy iron lamps, plaid blanket, and what makes it Bantam's? Clothes strewn about, ashtrays overflowing, dishes in sink, wrenches next to dead plants. Old bathtub on back porch littered with empties. Spy's dark-walled bedroom. Midnight sheets untucked. Dust, not bothered to dance in sunbeam. Place you take someone to fuck and then they leave. Soft focus out window while you go at it hard, thinking how you still don't know names of trees. Place of oblivion. Always wanting a room like that, though, but can't bear mess for long enough to build up dungeon atmosphere. Yet disciplined in pointless ways, like doing dishes immediately after overeating, like hours of writing taken over by preparing for gym, going to gym, recovering from gym, agoraphobia with a 4-block radius. Can't imagine trainers in regular clothes. One of them said he had the frame of a Muay Thai fighter and taught him to kick and throw punches, but just as exercise, and he dreads ever doing it in real life. But testosterone quickens anger and makes violence feel possible. Could be perceived as creepy right now, should stop peering. Finds knife in pocket, possible self-defense defense. Do Louis L'Amour heroes explain their names? He really should go. High Winds turns back onto the gravel road. All the weather reports, all the horoscopes, all the birthday cards. There were no birthday cards. All the therapies didn't know what this would feel like. 2 trucks heading towards each other on a chicken neck driveway. Not a math problem, but 200 yards apart, squinting to see for the first time in, how long has it been? If that's him, it's him, of course it's him. Maybe they'll just drive by in agreement, not yet tired of silence. What does Bantam see? A dude in his way, possibly an asshole. Bantam so large and different. They know each other's eyes. Honk, honk. Oh my God, is he serious now? His dog is barking. Are you fucking kidding me? This shit could go down completely through sound effects. One of us could pull over and let the other one pass. Could. Honk. Or use the English language. Slam. Bantam gets out. Bark. Howl. Moan. High Winds makes to open his door. It's stuck, but he gets it, but Bantam catches it. Both their hands grip the open door of the neighbor's truck. This is a private driveway. Sorry, I thought you'd pull over. Well, it's my driveway. Sorry. Hey, I got your postcard. Excuse me. And I answered your ad. Bantam, it's me. High Winds. I don't know that name. That's all.
Thank you for that.
Hi. Now it's the interpreter's time. Now, I was just thinking as you were both reading that one of the great things about making art and looking at art is that you don't have to live in the real world for brief periods. You get to escape it. And right now, of course, the real world is a monster. So sort of dissolve away in art. And in both these pieces, we're taken away from the real and into a much realer real books for the moment. One about this impossible Sisyphus, or the other, and the other a kind of panopticon which art is always threatening to change and transform you. Both books are incredibly beautiful objects, and that also makes sense in a time where beauty is rare. Okay, I have to do questions rather than write essays. In Sylvan's High Wind, E. Cummings' poem, trans man searches the iconic, idiomatic American West, a West which is more of Sam Shepard than Sam Peckinpah, looking for his other half, a half-brother who fled long ago. It's a picture of bravery and aloneness, of masculinity and sleeplessness, and it opens us up to a liminal state of our own. To be human is to be in prison. To be human, to be innocent and guilty, lost and found, seen and unseen all at once. Grant's text is fully imagined and describes crimes either committed or lived, searches for meaning. The art doesn't merely illustrate the crimes, rather suggests a deep pathology of pain, of classical pain, of expressionistic pain, which brings me to Keanu. How did you guys? Well, I thought I'd ask you a question, and so that you didn't feel unseen. People might not.
Cool,
know.
man.
What happened with the two of you that made you start XAB?
Alexandra and I collaborated before on 2 previous works, and coming out of that experience, Alexandra had the amazing idea of trying to start publishing.
I told you I was going to ask you the same questions you were talking about before. Okay, here's my 10 questions. What's the origin story for your piece? What does it come out of? Insomnia in it, and I feel your biography in it, since all art is biography in one sense. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. It was sort of a kind of, like, I guess, just the brain explosion of having lived on the East Coast my whole life and coming here and being like, what the hell? And like, what am I even going to possibly make here? I came from a really close theater community in New York, and I got a job out here. And so I relocated, and I had terrible insomnia. I was very alone, and landscape. And I mean, I think it's also filtered through transition and obviously family. But yeah, it was mostly like kind of alienating relocation and feeling like completely lost.
Did it mirror a personal sort of transformation? Coming west is such a big, and the icon for the book is so palpable, and sometimes native Californians stop seeing it. Yeah. It's sort of wonderfully. It's like that. There's a great book by Rayner Banham about L.A. Rayner Banham was a British scholar of architecture, and he came to L.A. and suddenly made it seem completely anthropologically new again and weird as hell. And that I've thought about that reading and looking at those pictures.
I love that.
So what were the first impulse? How did you start actually writing this?
I mean, I think I was doing a lot of research on desert plants. I actually, there was a grant application, which is often how things start. And I had an opportunity to apply a project that, and I don't even know where I got off thinking that I would get money for this, but I was literally like, I want to make a bedtime book for adults that's all weird and graphic and has no narrative, except it ended up having one. And like, I somehow made a very eloquent pitch for this thing, and it really wasn't anywhere in it. He was sort of a discovery who he kind of like burst through at a point of stuckness at one point. But yeah, I was like researching, I don't know, like pinup magazines and desert plants, and sometimes for me the beginning of a project is really casting a wide net and just kind of like responding to all the things that are in my personal ecosystem of my brain, and then seeing which things start to resonate with one another and how those things start to gather momentum.
It has the speed of a dream to it, and one of the things I loved is the I don't think I'm spoiling it. It's not that kind of book. It's not like who did it, but and mundane becomes realer and realer. Yeah. And so you have this great exchange at the end about a borrowed car. Talk about that.
Oh, well, I want to also add that I am adapting this text into a performance, and I have this amazing composer named Jerome Ellis, and the sound, what he does at that moment when High Winds is like back in his bed and sort of like, what just happened, is he's got this like trash truck thing going, and it's like beep, beep, and it just, exactly what the trash truck sounds like when it wakes you up in the morning, and it's like banging crap around. And like that, I mean, I feel like that so perfectly captures that kind of like hangover feeling. But yeah, actually there was a truck on my block that I was obsessed with, and actually I fantasized, and I still fantasize about this. This is my old block, so I can't even do it anymore, of like putting a copy of this book in like a plastic bag, which is something that happens in the book, and leaving it in the truck for my neighbor to find, which is what I wrote. And And I never did because the truck vanished. And then I moved away, and now it's just a...
It feels like the part of Peter Pan where suddenly we're back in horrible London, and everything is awful again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for you, you've been... I just have to say, you know, I'm friends with a lot of painters, and all of them end up being really great writers for some bizarre reason, and the opposite is not true. I don't know any writers who are really good artists, really, except for maybe one or two. But like, I was just thinking about, you know, David Sally in his 60s now, a really great modern artist, has become an essayist about and has written about his evolution. And anyway, I could go on, but I just was struck by the instant power of your imagery. You create you really do create a play. In fact, all I was thinking was, you could really stage this beautifully. So how did that happen?
You could help me.
Oh yeah, no,
I don't know if I could actually really stage it.
No, I was seeing the whole thing of the entire
This is what
time.
I would stage it as if we staged it.
No, I mean, I wouldn't stage it literally. I would create the dynamics in it. Were you always a writer as well?
I've always been a reader.
Yeah.
So, you know, at the basis of what I do as a painter is literature. I interpret words in the images I make. So I've always had that passion, but the response is sort of like a restless maker, was not to sit down and write. I didn't have the discipline. Plus, I like stuff, mushy stuff that has color, you know.
And the physical act.
Physical act of expression. And the idea that if you don't like it, you can X it out, or, you know, that color could represent a whole series of words. But in this case, this was a very unusual event for me, this book, because I was in a sort of disembodied place for me. In the same way Sylvan was in moving to LA, I was in Annecy in the Alps in France, teaching at an art school for a few days, and I had horrible jet lag. And it's like you stare at the blue your mind and your body, and I suddenly started having this idea, like all at once. Like, you know, what if the art world was in the prison? What would the prisoners be like? And the first prisoner, which we didn't read, is sentenced to his imagery is toxic. He's sentenced to be the water painter, so he can never, you know, he paints every single day, but it can never be seen by anybody.
And when the images were seen, so destructive, so demonic, that the lives of the viewer were destroyed. Yeah.
So it was almost like there was a backlog of information, of things that I had, you know, squirreled away, fantasies, dreams, and they all came forward. I had to buy these little notebooks and write the whole idea out. When I got back to LA, I found the time to go. I just thought, I have to write this whole thing out and see what it becomes. And it was incredible. This is very weird to tell you upstairs, but when I first published the book, I went to last year and I gave a copy to the who had invited me to the art school in Annecy, and she saw the title and she just looked at me and said, well, Alexandra, you know that the Annecy art school was used as a prison during World War II, and they killed and tortured, the SS used it to kill and torture resistance fighters. Has it occurred to you that you channeled the building? Yes. And I was like, no, it hadn't occurred to me. But it was as though, you know, this happens, it's a very different kind of creativity than painting, which is daily showing up and being like, who the heck did that? You know, collaborating with oneself in the studio is a very in a way. And again, it was in the confidence I was given by Eve Wood as a collaborator, by Florence Grant as an editor, by Keanu, you know, who I remember when you first read the text, you were like, it keeps getting darker. Like, I'm only on Prisoner 23, and it just seems like it keeps getting darker and
Yeah, it's awesome and funny and diabolical and kind of.
It's unlike anything. I mean, it reminds me of so many things. You make it entirely your own idea of being jet lagged in a state, and you're not moving out here, and so it requires a kind of change to see something, and whatever the spirit of the place is. I mean, Jung would have a field day with that, and he loves the Swiss Alps. So think of whatever exchange was happening. Talk about, there's one particular one that you didn't read that I'm fascinated with. Pinhole Artist, which is a little bit like the Camera Obscura in Santa Monica. It's an artist a prisoner who created a whole camera with the help of the prison warden, and a room is used as a kind of shimmery collector of images, which then, when you read the book, looked like the images I imagined in that. No detachment in the warden in that particular story. What did that story mean to you?
well, now you've projected a different meaning on than the one which I know I really know.
I think Francis Bacon was a romantic painter of, people's happiest moments. So, kidding.
Getting to know you on stage is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I'd like to put that question to Keanu. First, in Making Shadows, which is the book that you're referring to, you had such faith in me when I made this proposal to you to do these photographs, because again, I'm not a photographer either. I'm a painter, and so we had this idea. And so I think there's a bit of the pinhole artist in being given, like, in a way, you were the warden. Like, you gave the permission.
Wow.
I'm projecting too.
No,
See how that works?
I
You just
think
like
so.
don't know it.
I think I was just the white wall. I don't know.
The images in the book Shadows are extraordinary, and I think you're selling some here. I mean, not that it's about selling shit, but
Wait, but that is my job. Yes, it is.
We're publishers.
We're publishers.
yes, but there's
Without you, we're not
There's
really publishers.
But there's an illusion of a sort of sacred totemic object,
Of course there is.
Yes, and it's on PayPal?
No.
Have you mentioned xartistbooks.com yet? Anyone?
Okay. I wrote this question after meeting you upstairs, and I don't know why. And I'm sorry, it's a little fanish, but what's your favorite food?
Really?
I really wanted to know what your favorite food is.
It's because you were watching me with as I served myself 6 pieces of cheese. They were having a conversation about, in the theater, you should never eat dairy before a performance. And I was like,
there was no accent. There was like me, like a scolding like, what are you doing eating dairy before the show?
I'm okay. There's no colic or anything.
No, I just imagined you with papayas and pineapples in some way. And I'm sorry, I'm projecting again. Anyway, that wasn't really a real question. But my real question
thank goodness,
was, what is your favorite? Anyway, about the Panopticon, were you thinking?
Jeremy Bentham invented
a
prison.
Oh.
Yes, architectural history at some point. And the idea in this building, an eyeball in the middle of a prison that radiates rays so that the central eye is watching all these prisoners.
Don't know whether they're being seen or not.
Right.
Which is the essential component for compliance.
Well, I think that's what interests me about power in general in the world work. You know, breaking down those lines and for people who are so different than us. Part of the book and the was to the word.
I mean,
Give the ending away.
I'm not going
My book actually.
No, it wouldn't occur to me, but there
Sylvan's
is
work has a structure.
there's a great arc and surprise to it.
Between two lamps.
I want sorry. Sylvan, what's your favorite food?
Really?
I just thought it's like the most Jiminy Glick question one could ask of someone.
It might be Thai duck. That's her favorite.
So wait, I'm very between the outer world, which is of an emergingly clear repressive age, where intellectualism, thought, art are being rejected publicly in favor of brutal pragmatism. So I wonder about your relationship, for both of you, but I'll start with you. How is the way America has evolved in the last few years, how is that affecting your work? And how did it affect this work, if it did? I know it's a story of escape, so maybe there's a component of that.
I think that High Winds was completed before things changed dramatically.
Or before we really saw the change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before a lot of things. So I don't think it wasn't composed in response to this political moment, but I am working on something currently that's inspired by like another parallel moment of like speech repression and sectarian violence. It's called Trainers, and it's sort of set in a kind of, a friend of mine called it like, so I'm doing that.
I have a condo there, so.
I think there's a comic book in there.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Keanu always has this
Totally
business ideas.
Revolutionary comic.
Are you moving
happening.
away from playwriting?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I mean, moving out here was feeling like I was in the theater community, and literally the geography of New York makes it feel easier to interact with other humans, and it just felt like everywhere, my entire social life, my entire nightlife, everything, and I do each other. And so it made, I could go to a theater and then go home at night and see that theater in my mind's eye and be like for example, the Old Ohio Theater, like I would just sit with that, meditate on that theater space, and kind of just right into that space. But being here, I've found that I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll go and integrate myself into the theater scene in LA. But I got here and I was like, I didn't have the energy. It felt like I had spent that energy that I was given in my life in that moment of investing and working anymore, at least initially. And so I had to kind of, in some ways, writing High Winds was going back to kind of myself as an artist and who I thought I was going to do. I mean, I was writing a lot of plays, and then I did that web series, and then I started writing these texts because I felt like, oh, the other thing that High Winds came out of was me being like, all right, I'm going to do something that has nothing to do with the theater. And I was sort of just like pissed. And it wasn't until Alexandra was like, I think it should be an opera, that I was like, and at first I was like, hell no, like, leave me alone, you know. But then,
I think it'd be great.
but now I'm
to be
making it a
micro
show.
Opera.
Yeah, well, now making. Did I answer any questions?
You did. You did. You did.
Okay.
Alexandra, your piece more directly reflects some of the things that are happening, though this in a weirdly, I don't know, suggestive way, your world feels vaguely humanitarian in some sense. Am I reading into that? It feels like, you know,
No.
I'm not going to do that. Go ahead.
There was a question there that I'm answering by speaking about the book. Hope, a little bit of hope. You know, the work to really answer the first series of questions was the hallucinations at high altitude were in 2013. I wrote the book in 2014, 2015. Eve and I worked on the drawing. She worked on the drawings in beginning this reconciliation of image and text, and then we entered into design. I guess in early 2017. Written in political moment per se. You know, there is a character. Once Trump got elected, I thought, oh my gosh, this could be Trump. This one of these prisoners. It's so narcissistic and manipulative and brilliant in this own, but in this system that was unimaginable. So again, what was interesting is Keanu and I launched Ex-Artist Books in Paris in November, and we were at the dinner afterwards, and this woman sort of turned to me and said, your book is exactly, it's like Sartre's Week. And I was like, oh my God, of course, but it had never occurred to me. So in a way, I think the work is about the emergence of authoritarian states, and whether it was because I channeled a World War II prison, or because I grew up reading Sartre's plays and was interested in the idea of no exit and all these thinking about being and you know, those metaphoric constructs, basically, of reality. Back to your question about reality, how things play out within a closed system that's parallel yet from ours. So, is it a way of commenting on society, or, you know, another reader said to me, it's an autobiography. You know, that all of the prisoners are actually versions of myself, and like you said, that every artist, in some ways, in their own prison. So I think there's a lot of play.
There's I'm just remembering, I'm sorry for being free associative, but Freud had this little tiny thing he wrote about Harry Houdini, and all of those elaborate attempts to invent ways of escape prefigure Harry Houdini was, you know, a very much a Jewish immigrant, or immigrants, but he was prefiguring ways of escape for the European Jews to come to America, and of course died in the process. And that's just Freud in his notebook. I mean, but I did think when both of you were talking, there's a quote from Masha Gessen, who's a really very good writer about oppression. She's Russian, but lives in New York. She wrote, to create and to confront, one has to be an outcast. And so my question was, how are you both outcasts? Because I think it's a very true notion. And
Will you answer that
you
question?
Don't look at me. I didn't write a book. You guys wrote books.
What's your favorite food?
What is your
Who cares? I mean, like, yeah. I mean, I think it's a provocative question.
Well, since everyone's looking at me, I guess, I mean, I had a summer birthday. So I always felt like no one could come to my party. But no, a queer person and a trans person, you grow up in, I mean, anyone who has a bit of outsider identity or minoritarian, self-awareness is knows what it feels like to look at media and not see yourself reflected, or to feel yourself other than other kids, what other kids are doing and what it is you're supposed to be crushing on, or how you're supposed to be dressing, and also being an artist, knowing I was going to be an artist from a really young age. I always felt like apart from other folks, and I mean, I don't want it, but I don't think of it in a victim-y way. I mean, I have white privilege, and you can't, I don't want to not name that, right? But yeah, and I don't know.
Wait, what do you mean by I have white privilege?
I feel like I feel weird saying I'm an outcast. I feel like access to some privilege in the society and the way it works. But I see what you mean in a metaphoric sense.
Yeah, I know I wasn't.
I went too literal.
No, that's okay. Making stuff out of nothing, that making things that require an audience to examine, just that alone makes you freakish and an outcast. That's all it takes.
I could have stopped there.
I had the same question for you.
You had a response, though.
No, you guys are. You want me to buy you some time?
What do you mean by that?
He's
Am
on
I
to me.
interrogating you?
So the idea of an outcast, I mean,
I won't ask any more big questions.
I really.
That what did you say? That to create something, you have to be.
To create and protest was her thing.
Was what your.
To create and confront.
Right, that you have to.
That
makes you
an
outcast. That makes you an outcast.
I think. I don't
Well,
know.
I guess
What's that freak doing drawing in the sand? Like.
I think. No, there are degrees.
They're like, wow, man, that looks cool. Freak.
No.
I mean,
I think the
playing,
main thing
that's-
in her thought is confront. These confrontations in a way.
Sure. Okay.
One kind of gentle, dreamy, and the other nightmarish and hilarious. Confrontations.
I mean,
Can we trade words? I want gentle and dreamy.
well, the confrontation at the center of this, and it's like what happens after the confrontation, and and can you come back to reality and do something with what you've learned? I mean, Highlands makes a confrontation and nothing comes of it. I mean, that's part of what makes the ending bleak. It's a confrontation and he is not seen,
And you take it to nature as well, right? Do you
Copy?
Of Prisoner? Or
No, High Winds.
Yes,
High Winds.
But I have to have it
mean,
back.
Okay. I was gonna give you.
it's signed.
It's
I don't know. I mean,
Dead.
I'm buying you more time.
I
And then
appreciate
Q&A is
do that while you're doing. Okay.
time. Wait,
No.
no, go say your thing.
So I grew up with parents from two different nationalities, with two different passports in the country that I lived in. I lived in Mexico as a child in part, and in the States, and in France, and in Spain, and moving. And I think when you have moved, and sometimes, it's like I have a Scottish father, and I go to Edinburgh, and if I don't move or open my mouth, I look like the people around me. And the minute, it's like a word comes out, it's like, oh, American, like the arms start moving, and everyone's like, oh my, But growing up speaking Spanish and, having an appreciation for literary traditions outside of the English language, of realizing, as many novels as I've been able to in this life so far, grew up in studying in languages that weren't their own, or in countries where they were taken, either in colonial circumstances, as children growing up in Africa, or, that there's such an exciting literature that comes from that sense, and whether it's real or if it's perceived sense of being outside or outside of what other people are doing, simply by the gesture of wanting to write. I mean, there were periods of time where women weren't allowed to write, and that impulse got them in infinitely greater trouble than sort of any kind of sexual act might have done. So I have been told as a painter that I shouldn't pursue my own creativity, and I found that in my own artist community, that I've been told to behave, which as a woman I find really, really, something that I respond to. So for me, that sense of hopefulness in this project, in these works, is to give myself permission and also permission to others. I say really annoying things like, I think it should be an opera. Sylvan be like, I thought I was done with you. But it's that sense of, if I can reconcile own fractured identity publicly, that might give permission to another person to do the same. And so that is the hope. It's that humanitarian hope of through the creative act to connect with a greater commune of other people who are trying to pacify and learn sort of self-acceptance through the generosity of that. And again, it's a tricky place, right? To make sure that your impulse isn't to be the narcissist in the the character in the book, that you're acting from a place of vulnerability instead of desire to have power over or control. And that, I think, is the basis of what I try to do as an artist, and whether it's through writing or photography, collaboration or alone, it's that vulnerability. And, again, it's like, the only time I feel like the outcast word applies to me is people are like, so you're tall. And I'm like, yeah, like that there are these moments where, and noting of that, for example, has given me a sense of empathy towards other forms of what is it like to, I'm always, people talk about my hair all the time, and I'm like, I'm a blonde, which is funny to me. See, that was a joke. Yeah, but like how you inhabit, we're giving each of us these like incredible vehicles of which we have some control and some lack of control, and we have to relate through this body to others, and that is like infinitely fascinating. My problem, Keanu might agree or disagree, is that I suffer from the desire to have like all of these ideas of ways to connect, right?
Well,
did I answer? I don't know if we're answering any questions tonight. It's great.
no, it was. I thought it was a beautiful, actually a beautiful answer, and it's the first time I've ever heard someone be earnest while at the same time holding on to their sophisticated and actually comprehensive view of their role in society, while still actually talking about a kind of idealism. So I approve.
I find it utterly alarming. I mean, I think this idea of success, we, read The Failure, and the two artists, one who can't succeed and the other can't fail, because it is an alarming thing when you succeed, and how, you want to keep, comes from the word earth. It's that sense of how do you continue that return to be around, and that constant search, I think, for humility, I think, is what drew me into High Wind, right? The sense of like going on this odyssey, but at the same time being forced to the ground in some ways. But, you know, how do you... Did you want to read from High Winds? I say you. Now I bought you some
No, it's
time.
okay. Yeah, no, but I mean, to your point, just to, you know, put it in Sylvan's, it's like, in which I think is behind part of the appreciation of what you guys are talking about is life, right? And part of that appreciation and humility comes to understanding, if you ask High Winds, the sun just sets and takes the information with it.
That was the last thing I was going to say. I wrote that quote down, and I thought that was everything. That everything was embodied by that. The daily everythingness that we put to bed and that disappears only to sort of reinvent itself the next day. That's sort of life. Yeah, I think it's time to let other people ask things and stuff. Before quite doing that, I just want to say, I hope that you guys keep doing this and publishing people, because it brings people together in all the ways that you were hoping for. And I think that's what you've done tonight by becoming a publisher and sharing. And with that, is
Thank
there
you. Thanks for that.
you.
Appreciate it.
for all of them. How is the Q&A part? Are there lights that go on? Do
I have
people
a
hold
mic
their
over here,
hands?
so if you just want to raise your hand, maybe time for 2 or so.
Do you want to put the house
I'll try to
lights
get
on a little
either
more?
side.
Usually the Q&A part has the house lights up.
We have
Oh,
a-
yeah. Well, I don't think I should call the person in the first. Okay, go. It's just that you're so visible. I was going to get to you, and I was always afraid that.
She can go.
Go,
Let
go.
her go.
It's my turn to be seen. I have a hard time allowing myself to be seen, so thank you. I always felt like I didn't understand art, and because I'm a reader, and I'm fascinated by how you brought it to life with me, like the art, by mixing it with the words, so I want to thank you for that. And because I don't really understand art, Keanu had a question is, what drew you to art? Like, what drew you to want to publish art?
Art. What made me want to publish art? Well, I mean, I think I'm kind of like Alexandra. I grew up reading and loving the experience of that relationship of going into another world or having something expressed. And as that was maturing, you know, it was actually, wow, I like that. Oh, I can relate to that. Oh, I feel like that. Wow, that's a cool thing. And so that experience, and then getting older and having a chance to participate and collaborate and make shit, kind of evolved to like, let's take what other people make and throw it out there and give that experience.
Yeah. More people? Oh, back there in the middle there. Oh, I think you have red hair. You? Yeah? No, you. Who's looking behind you? You, yeah.
Now you can hear me. That you describe the artists from the warden's point of view, which gives it this very clinical kind of third-person examination. And I wondered what made you do that and not have us hear from them themselves, instead have this kind of God's eye view.
Why is it not in the first?
I appreciate the translation. I'm sorry. I'm going to owe you such a big apology.
Is that, wait, I wasn't trying to be, that was like,
No, this is fun.
is that what they call mansplaining?
Ladies, should we vote on that?
God, no.
Go. Thank you for the question. You know, to be honest, it never occurred to me it always was meant to be a redacted document so that the speaking allowed for a kind of awkwardness and performative quality. I always imagined these two characters in sort of United Nations, but very empty space, facing each other across the divide of gender and power roles. So I would love for someone else to imagine that from that, I didn't come from a fictional perspective. Really, it was like I had this data download of this document because I saw the redactions before I wrote the text, right? That I saw it as a fictive legal document. I feel like I wish I could write fiction, right? Like I wish I could position myself in that place where I could write an I who wasn't me. So writing from the third person perspective, did I phrase that correctly? Okay.
I will not.
Cracking myself up. So I hope that answers your question. There is an I in the character of Warden. So her I-ness is fragmented through her reporting on others. So that really is a mirror of her own life.
Maybe that will be the second book, is from the artist's point of view.
The artist prison too.
Hi. The gentleman with the blue arm. Yes, you. I think it's.
Thank you. I've been going through Shadows, and I'm very fascinated to go through the art prison and through High Winds as well. And my question is kind of to everybody on the stage at this moment. Creating can be such a personal endeavor, and it can be the expulsion of everything that is the culmination of your life experiences, but that can also at times create a form of barrier to that expression. Have you ever encountered, as you're going through the creation of your work, a barrier of self, kind of your own personal lens holding back the platform or the art that you can create?
I think I'm just going to jump in. And back to that sense of vulnerability. And so in a way, we make the most vulnerable work we're able to at the time we make it. And it is a process of letting those walls down, of letting that vulnerability down, of attempting to be a maker in a way one has never made. And find honesty in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like a question of, like, do you get stuck? You know, I'm not sure if that's what you were meaning, but it's sort of like, you know, you get in your own way. And I think, I think the task is to, oh man, you know, just like bust your ass to get around that, get around yourself, you know, if you find that you're getting in your own way. And a lot of times something that I will do is do something I don't know how to do, you know, like, I think making a web series was something like that. Like, I feel like amazing. I mean, and one of the things I love about the first year of XAB has been when you were pitching it to me about, like, all the people who are doing things they don't normally do. You know, there's so many people who are stepping out of their comfort zone, like from you with painting into writing. And I think for me, out of playwriting and into this text making process, and also into collaboration, like from the beginning with Jessica, we worked really closely together. And I mean, we haven't talked enough about her amazing work on that book. I hope you guys get a chance to see it. But yeah, I think like kind of like pushing yourself towards your own places of ignorance. And I don't narrow-mindedness, I mean just naivete. That like that's a really powerful place to work from, to like pick up a musical instrument you don't know how to play, or pick up whatever artistic tool that it's
very different and very but yet lends to a kind of empathy, right? The way that language has framed my painting, your acting, your playwriting, what we think about a book, and to share around that idea. Again, I don't know if we've answered the Blue Arm's question, but
let's have one more question. Way over there, that nice person with leopard arms.
Leopard arms, to follow Blue Arms.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I'm a fourth generation storyteller, and my question is, I have literally hundreds of stories. How might I be one of the artists to become a part of this wonderful collaboration of XAB?
Is that your department or mine?
We share that department. The quick answer is that right now we're with this opportunity, we're a small company and we don't have a lot of infrastructure, and we have identified the works that we're, for the most part, going to move forward with for the next, I guess, publishing cycle, maybe, I guess. One of the things that we were thinking about also is just kind of doing like a little X artist books, which was maybe going into the children's realm. But the company right now doesn't take any submissions just because we can't. But there are ways, I mean, some things have kind of come through with things that you've come in contact with and stuff. And then other than that, I hope you get to tell your stories. I mean, and I hope that there's a way that can be collected for you and for you to get that out. Do you have is yours in an oral tradition, or do you write them down? Right, so that's someone needs to film that. It's actually what you you need to get someone to get over there with a camera and film that.
I mean, I sometimes teach art, and this will be the last answer, and people always...
And write it down, I'm sorry, excuse me, yeah. I mean, you need to get that written down, too.
Well, and art students always art teacher and say, how can I get in the show? How can I get in the show? And I always say, curate a show. Make your own show. And the main lesson I would hope you take away from tonight is that XAB came about because I made a book that it didn't fit into any neat categories, right? These collaborative we want to publish art typically can be 1 or 2 copies are squirreled away in collections that aren't available to a greater public. And so we really wanted to have the opportunity to spread the word around the world of a certain number of projects. So if there's any, the seed again is how can you organize the people around you, which is what I was able to do to galvanize my community to do this gesture. And I want to encourage everyone to, give it a go, even if it's whatever the attempt is. Yeah.
A last tiny thing is Jessica and Eve Wood. I don't know if Jessica's not here, you said, but Eve is here. Can you just stand for a minute? Because I think the work you did is integral, and it's a true collaboration, and the images are riveting. And the same for Jessica. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Keanu. Thank you, Sylvan. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you,
You're
Robbie.
very welcome, and thanks for coming out for this. And good night.
Thank you.
And I know you've been sitting